sure that's the microphone.
Yeah.
Wait. Fix it on your ears. All right. Now you should be able to hear, right?
Yeah. Kyan-san, nice to see you.
先生、こんばんは。
はい。
こんばんは。
こんばんは。
浜田です。聞こえるかどうか。
Hello. Good morning, Tokyo. Good evening, Boston. Washington, D.C., Jakarta, and good morning, Sydney. I'm Nobue Mita, the representative of Boston Global Forum Japan. I'm very happy to have such wonderful conference during best cherry blossom season in Tokyo again. Tuan could come to Tokyo for the first time in 4 years because of COVID-19. We are very,
Yes.
very glad to have him. And the Shinzo Abe Initiative second conference. We Japanese appreciate very much to create for supporting Japan. Thank you so much. We appreciate BGF. Today, we have 2 current ministers, Japanese ministers. I'm very honored. One is a Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yoshimasa Hayashi, and Minister of Digital, Taro Kono. They will hold speech after this. And today, Japan's leading economists gathered. Koichi Hamada, Etsuro Honda, Mr. Abenomics, former Switzerland ambassador to Switzerland, and Masazumi Wakatabe. He is the former deputy governor of Japan Bank until this March 19th. And Tatsuo Hatta. He is the president of Asian Growth Institute. And Jesper Kohl. He's the founding member of MANEX. He will be a moderator of part 2 discussion. And Kazuo Suzuki, he is the professor from Tokyo University. He attended from Sydney University today. And a very prominent economist, Adam Posen. He is the Peterson International Economic Institute. He is president. And Shiro Armstrong. He is a professor from Australian National University. And also, I appreciate other great intellectuals today. And coming April, Governor Michael Dukakis, chair of BGF, he will be 90 years old. Congratulations, Governor Dukakis. Uh,
Congratulations.
and today's moderator will be Mr. Ichiro Fujisaki. He was a former Japanese ambassador to the USA and president of Nakasone Peace Institute. Thank you very much. And today, Abe Initiative, and we will honor to Prime Minister Abe after that. And also, we have today, Vietnamese singer will sing for Prime Minister Abe. I hope this conference will be a fruitful one. Thank you very much.
Oh. Am I being heard?
I can hear you.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, everyone. It's my great honor and indeed privilege to be given this opportunity to attend this prestigious conference and greet you all as Consul General of Japan in Boston. My sincere appreciation goes to Mr. Gwen Antoine and the Boston Global Forum under the auspices of the ex-governor Michael Dukakis for taking the initiative and organizing the event. I'd also like to pay my respects to all the participants, veterans and experts in diverse fields. I heard this conference is centered upon economy and technology after the first conference, which focused upon the security and geopolitical dimension of the late Prime Minister Mr. Shinzo Abe's vision and his legacy. The theme, it seems, is quite opportune and pertinent in the changing international landscape and the expanding economic horizon of our era, where economy, technology, politics, and security are intertwined more than ever. And the advancing technology is reshaping our life, society, and the world. Here in Boston, I'm quite impressed and encouraged on almost daily basis, witnessing scientists and companies of the United States, Japan, and other countries dynamically interact, advance knowledge and technology, and create new business. So it would be of great significance to the world of this century if Japan, US, and countries which share the fundamental values and spirit stand up to the challenge as partners and open the frontiers of economy, technology, and society. And such was certainly visualized by Mr. Shinzo Abe, who wanted to reboost the economy with Abenomics and reached out for free and open Indo-Pacific with his energetic diplomatic activities. Today, I would like to learn and benefit from the wisdom and ideas of distinguished speakers. Thank you.
Now, Professor Thomas Patterson on behalf of Governor Michael Luca present. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. For Governor Michael Dukakis. Governor Michael Dukakis will join late because today is a big event of democracy in Boston, and he will join about 9 p.m. in Boston. So, Professor Thomas Patterson will, on behalf of Governor Michael Dukakis, present his speech to honor Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and after that, Governor Michael Dukakis will join with us and discuss later. Yeah. Now, Professor Tom Patterson.
Yeah, thank you, Tuan, and good morning and good evening to our distinguished guests. Mike prepared a letter, and he would be reading it to you if he was here, and so I'm going to read it to you. Dear friends, it is with a heavy heart that we gather today to honor and remember the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. As the chair of the Boston Global Forum, I had the honor of presenting the World Leader for Peace and Security Award to Prime Minister Abe in 2015 in recognition of his significant contributions to global peace and security. Prime Minister Abe was a true leader and visionary, whose tireless efforts to promote international cooperation and understanding will be deeply missed. His dedication to the values of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law inspired people around the world, and his legacy will continue to guide us as we work to build a more peaceful and just world. Throughout his career, Prime Minister Abe was a strong supporter of the Boston Global Forum's mission to promote peace and security through technology and policy innovation. He made valuable contributions to our work through his speeches and as a distinguished contributor to our book, Remaking the World Toward an Age of Global Enlightenment. His leadership was particularly crucial in our initiative to inform the 2016 G7 summit, where he helped to shape the agenda around global security and economic issues. In recognition of his contributions, the Boston Global Forum founded the Shinzo Abe Initiative for Peace and Security on July 10, 2022. This initiative will continue to build on Prime Minister Abe's legacy by promoting collaboration among leaders and experts from around the world. We recognize Prime Minister Shinzo Abe as a global enlightenment leader whose commitment to peace and security will continue to inspire us for generations to come. His heritage and legacy live on, and we will honor his memory by working together to build the age of global enlightenment that he envisioned. Rest in peace, Prime Minister Abe, and thank you for your invaluable contributions to the world. Sincerely, Michael Dukakis.
Prime Minister Abe. Yeah. And we did like to honor Prime Minister Abe from Boston Global Forum. He's a great friend and great leader, not only in Japan, in the world, and very, very important today leader. Thank you. Yeah. From Boston Global Forum, we send our respect from our heart to legacy, heritage, and contribution, achievement of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Please present, sing a song, yeah, to honor and memorialize.
Bùi Thúy xin kính chào toàn thể các quý vị. Là một nghệ sĩ Việt, Bùi Thúy xin kính chào toàn thể các quý vị. Là một nghệ sĩ Việt Nam vô cùng Yêu mến và kính trọng Thủ tướng Shinzo Abe, cũng như được truyền cảm hứng từ sáng kiến xây dựng kỷ nguyên khai sáng toàn cầu. Tôi rất vinh dự được mời hát, tưởng niệm và vinh danh Thủ tướng Shinzo Abe tại Hội nghị đặc biệt sáng kiến Shinzo Abe ngày 5 tháng 4 năm 2023 giữa mùa hoa anh đào đang rực rỡ Tokyo. Tôi xin kính dâng lên Thủ tướng ca khúc Khát vọng, một sáng tác của nhạc sĩ Phạm Minh Tuấn. Hãy sống như đời sống để biết yêu nguồn cội. Hãy sống như đời núi vươn tới những tầm cao. Hãy sống như biển trào để thấy bờ bên rộng. Hãy sống và ước vọng để thấy đời mênh mông. Và sao không là gió, là mây để thấy trời bao la. Và sao không là phù sa dâng mơ màu cho hoa. Sao không là bài ca của tình yêu đôi lứa. Sao không là mặt trời gieo hạt nắng vô tư. Hãy sống như đời sống để biết yêu nguồn cội. Hãy sống như đời núi vươn tới những tầm cao. Hãy sống như biển trào để thấy bờ bên rộng. Hãy sống và ước vọng để thấy đời mênh mông. Và sao không là bão, là giông, là ánh lửa đêm đông. Và sao không là hạt giống xanh đất mẹ bao dung. Sao không là đàn chim gọi mình thức giấc. Sao không là mặt trời gieo hạt nắng vô tư. Và sao không là gió, là mây để thấy trời bao la. Và sao không là hạt giống xanh đất mẹ bao dung. Sao không là bài ca của tình yêu đôi lứa. Sao không là mặt trời gieo hạt nắng vô tư. Sao không là mặt trời gieo hạt nắng vô tư.
Thank you. Thank you, great renowned singer Bùi Thúy with her heart sing song. I'm on behalf of our group of Boston Global Forum to present shortly a brief about special report about having the Japan prominent in the new age of global enlightenment. You see already, I sent all already about that report, and this is exciting. The name, I only want to say that is the brain and heart from our Boston Global Forum, distinguished thinkers and leaders to contribute for Japan and also to respect and admire Prime Minister Abe by this report. We hope this is a very new concept and breakthrough to support and help Japan to become prominent in the world, in this new age of global enlightenment. Some keynote, the first that is we create a new model, an open list society, attract young talent, resource in the world to support Japan. And Japan bring soft power in kindness, ethics, standards, and culture. Very important, not only in life, in the politics, in the world today. We respect culture of Japan and by that. And the second, we build a new model of Silicon Valley. Now, compete with China is compete in tech economy. And tech economy with alliance between Japan, the US, India, Europe to build common market and talent resource, innovation, and we connect all labs, innovation center, and companies, university around US, Japan, India, Europe, and we expand to Australia, Canada, South Korea, Israel, something like that. And we make new model, Silicon Valley, online, and Japan, we hope play very important role in this initiative named the Global Enlightenment Mountain. Yes, Silicon Valley, that is valley, and we rise and sun in light. So we are in mountain and name that, and we present very detailed already, and I don't want to say more. And also another, I think the basic community, the global enlightenment community, including big thinkers, innovators, and elite people, leaders, business community to around the world. And we encourage alliance with this community. And Boston Global Forum do that, and do with Japan. But we think this is a big opportunity for Japan to lead together with the West in the world for new age of global enlightenment. We attract talent, young talent, and elite people, and distinguished thinkers, innovators. Japan will make very successful again, and with big industry. Japan great industry and innovation already. So that is our concept, and you can discuss more. And my colleague, Samuel Sama, can talk a little bit more about that. And yeah, thank you so much. And this is one more again. This is the heart plan of our Boston Global Forum in Japan. Samuel, yeah, you can speak something more. So I think we can continue to do for next speaker and panel because now Ambassador Fujisaki moderated the whole event. Yeah, thank you.
伸びますね。これなんですね。マイクちょっと伸ばしてください。
Thank you very much. Good morning. I think this meeting is almost a success because of topics that we are going to discuss, because of the great people gathered. However, the reason I said almost is that there is a trap as well. It could sort of have a little problem. Two reasons. One, if people spoke too long presentations, too long interventions, there'll be no time for discussions. Second, if there's too much meeting of minds, if there's no difference of views, it'll be boring, if I may say. So please have lively discussion. And one thing I did good for the meeting is that I chose a moderator for the first session, a guy who has a special talent to make the discussion lively. Here, Jasper Cole. So, can you just show your face?
Hello, I share my face very briefly. I'm honored to be here and I look very much forward to the discussion and points at tweet speed.
So, thank you very much. Look forward to the discussion.
So, to present video. Present video to the minister.
Adam Posen.
Adam Posen.
Please, Adam Posen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to everyone, and particularly Professor Koichi Hamada, from whom I've learned so much and who kindly included me in this distinguished company. I have to admit, I was born in Brookline, Massachusetts, home of Michael Dukakis, and his daughter was a year ahead of me in high school. He was governor while I was in high school. So it is a particular honor to be here under his auspices and to, most of all, to recognize the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. In 4.5 minutes, what would I want to emphasize? I think I would emphasize 4 things that, to me, Prime Minister Abe delivered for Japan, that were also good for the world and were an example for other high-income democracies. The first was the belief that you could do reform without a crisis. For many years, as many people on this event knew, as Jesper Cole knew well, we had many years of people insisting Japan could never reform, Japan could never improve its growth rate, Japan could never make structural change unless something really bad happened. And there were even people who suggested the government should stop spending money or the Bank of Japan should raise interest rates a lot to force a crisis. The first prime minister who made a difference on that, of course, was Junichiro Koizumi, with his advisor Heizo Takanaka, please forgive me. But then in reality, done by Prime Minister Abe and the many people on this event who advised him. You saw a total transformation of Japanese agriculture. You saw a total transformation of female labor force participation, womenomics. You saw a total transformation of trade policy into a position of leadership in TPP, now CPTPP. These were all things that people thought of as impossible that a democratically elected leader managed to do in Japan. And so that message to me is the most important and first thing that Shinzo Abe teaches us. The second thing that I think Shinzo Abe's accomplishments in economics and his team pursued that was critically important was to push for openness and rules-based international economics at a time when the US increasingly was withdrawing. We all know that he had Donald Trump as president of the US to cope with during part of his term. We also have seen the Biden administration continue some of the bad trade policies of the Trump administration. We saw China, whereas others on this call and event can speak about, Prime Minister Abe had no illusions. But in the end, he and Japan remained steadfast supporters of an open world economy. Again, CPTPP was the most prominent aspect, but Japan's engagement with RCEP, with the WTO, with currencies, with the IMF, the World Bank, all served in this role. And as with the European Union and Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and some others, Japan especially played a role in keeping the multilateral institutions and the rules of the game going under Shinzo Abe, even as the US and China, in my view, misbehaved. That was a huge accomplishment for Japan, and that was a benefit to the world. The third point I want to pick up on, which, given the ambassador's advice to be controversial, is that I think Prime Minister Abe, to some degree, deliberately followed the right path in thinking about made by Japan versus made in Japan. That I had the privilege to work for former Toyota chairman, Mr. Okuda, when he was chairman of Keidanren. I worked as a consultant, and there was a declared shift by Keidanren. This was around 2002 or 3, from made in Japan to made by Japan. That Japan was a technological leader, a brand leader, and it could invest abroad in the US, in China, elsewhere, and it didn't have to make everything at home. And that logic continued and more strongly under Prime Minister Abe. And the reason this may be controversial, and it's certainly controversial in the US, as I've been arguing lately, is you gain from technology not so much by being the innovator, but by being willing to adapt technologies and adopt technologies as widely as possible. This was the great internet revolution in the US, which came not so much because the US was the producer of all the chips, but because the US let its economy transform most with the new technology. In the early 2000s and mid 2000s, following Koizumi, Japan had gotten a bit into a Galapagos syndrome on technology, creating specific lines of technology that worked for Japan that were not engaged with others, not doing as many, sending its good young people abroad to work in the US or elsewhere. And under Abe, this reversed, at least in part. And this helped keep Japan with a high rate of per capita income growth. The fourth point I would mention about Prime Minister Abe, in my understanding and my limited experience working directly with him, but with others who worked for him, was that he saw no contradiction between Japan pursuing its self-interest and Japan pursuing communal economic interests. I don't want to suggest that he was naive or he got walked over by Trump or by Xi. I don't think that was the case. What I do think was the case, unlike many leaders we see in the G7 today, he understood that the geopolitics and economics were not necessarily a zero-sum game. And for all his concern about the rise of China, he was not prepared to divide the world easily or casually. So for those 4 reasons, I think the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was a true visionary leader in the spirit that the Boston Global Forum means, at least in economic affairs. And I was very proud to, in a small way, advise and promote some of his policies. Thank you very much for including me in this event.
Okay, Adam, thank you very much for this wonderful introduction and, for also keeping into the 5 minutes time limit here. Thank you very much. Can I call upon Cameron Carey, the former US Acting Secretary of Commerce, to give 5 minutes of remarks? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be here. I am in Washington, where it is also cherry blossom season, a monument to U.S.-Japanese friendship. I'm here for an international conference of privacy professionals, 80,000 members worldwide, several thousand here, on an issue that is important to democracy, important to data flows, digital governance, and to data free flows with trust. And yesterday I hosted a dinner with many visiting officials, data protection regulators from the European Union, Singapore, other countries, as well as US officials from across our government and others from civil society, the private sector, and academia. And I also had as one of the guests there, the Minister Counselor Hideaki Fujikawa from the Japanese mission in Washington. And I asked him to talk about Japan's plans in the G7 presidency to advance data free flows with trust. Upcoming ministerial in May, and then the meeting in Hiroshima in June, which he did. And I think somewhat to my surprise, there was very warm support in the room, including from European officials, many of whom I think have, sometimes looked at data free flow with trust as an initiative that's interposed as an alternative to their regime under the General Data Protection Regulation and Adequacy regime. But in fact, welcoming it, seeing it as an important initiative, wanting to succeed and to strengthen it. And I strongly support the views that were expressed there, that Japan, because of its position in the Pacific, in the Indo-Pacific region, because of its history of multilateral cooperation and support for trade, because it is a democracy with Asian characteristics and on the front lines of security issues, and because of the leadership that we just heard about, has such an important role here. And I think the effort on data free flows with trust has important contributions to make to data governance and digital governance, and a few suggestions for that agenda and ways that the G7 can make progress to support that legacy of Prime Minister Abe. The first is the OECD last year developed recommendations for norms for government access to data held by private sectors, both by law enforcement agencies and by intelligence bodies. And it is important to incorporate those into the data free flows with trust and to advance those. All of the G7 members are OECD members and signatories to that. That should not be a heavy lift, and it's an opportunity to make progress. The second would be to build further on the cross-border privacy rules that were an APEC initiative, but that the United States and Japan and others converted to a cross-border privacy rules forum last year with a view towards expanding it to a broader range of nations. But as part of that effort, it needs to be more concrete, it needs to be updated, and it needs to incorporate more of aspects of what is now in the Japan EU adequacy agreement, the US EU data protection framework, and to make that a more concrete basis for trust. And then the third, I would say, is to take some of what has been done between the US and the EU bilaterally in the Trade and Technology Council, and to expand that, and particularly with respect to artificial intelligence, where I think we've seen perhaps the most robust progress out of the TTC with an AI roadmap that I think bears an imprint of some of the work that we've done in the Forum for Cooperation on AI that I've talked about with some of you previously. But particularly to build out priorities for international standards development and for common definitions of AI. This is now a pressing issue for democracies and one in which we need to make progress. But the data free flows with trust is an important legacy of Prime Minister Abe. This is an opportunity to carry forward that legacy and to make it concrete solutions for a digital age or for a new era of enlightenment. Thank you.
Wonderful, Secretary Kerry. Very important, again, to emphasize trust. We talk a lot about the rule of law, but I think we all recognize that there is a lot of shifting parameters, not just technology, but also geopolitical shifts occurring. So setting standards, making the rules in an open and transparent way, that certainly was a big legacy that former Prime Minister Abe left us all with. And I know that this group will develop this further and take this further. Thank you. So I think now we've got a couple of video messages. One is from Hayashi Sensei, the current Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs. If you could please start that up.
Ambassador Fujisaki, Professor Patterson, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this distinguished forum. I am Hayashi Yoshimasa, Japanese Minister for Foreign Affairs. It is a privilege for me to be a part of the Shinzo Abe conference, which honors the late Prime Minister Abe and his legacy. Today, we find ourselves at history's turning point. Russia's aggression against Ukraine has threatened the very foundation of the international order. Not only do we face these unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force, but we also face the opaque and unfair use of economic influence to realize one's own strategic interest. Furthermore, astounding advancements in AI and the global push for digitalization require us to make a transformation. When I received your invitation to this forum, I asked myself, what kind of laws are expected of Japan and the US in our ongoing collaborative efforts to address these new challenges? First, maintaining and developing an open, rules-based, stable international economic order is extremely important for Japan, a nation that has prospered under free trade. The expansion of a free and fair economic sphere would drive economic prosperity while also serving a long-term national security cause, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. The late Prime Minister Abe understood this better than anyone. And Japan remains fully committed to advancing the TPP and still strongly hopes for the early return of the US. Moreover, Japan attaches importance to the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework launched here in Tokyo last May. Japan is determined to take the lead in negotiating with our IPEF partners toward materializing swift, tangible benefits. Japan and the US share the common understanding that we must work together with other like-minded countries to maintain and develop this rules-based international order and secure economic security. The first Economic 2+2, which we held in July of last year, was born out of this shared vision. In the digital sphere, Japan and the US reaffirmed our intention to continue promoting the concept of data-free flow with trust, another one of former Prime Minister Abe's legacies, at this January's Japan-US summit meeting. Together, we will lead the effort to establish common rules for data distribution within multilateral initiatives. Second, it is also crucial to make ourselves and our like-minded partners more resilient. Japan will continue to cooperate with the US on the protection and promotion of critical and emerging technologies, including semiconductors, biotechnologies, quantum, and AI. In fact, we are already witnessing numerous joint research and development projects in cutting-edge fields between our two nations. This year, Japan holds the G7 presidency just as the United States takes on its role as APEC chair. Together, we will lead discussions and take action. In the words of our late Prime Minister, Japan will continue to be one of the foremost open, democratic, and law-abiding contributors to peace and growth in the world. I wish you all a fruitful and successful discussion in this forum.
Thank you very much, Hayashi Daijin. I think we now have another current cabinet minister, Kono Taro, the current digital minister here in Japan, for a little address.
Hi, my name is Kono Taro, digital minister for Japan. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity at the Global Forum Kickoff Conference. Well, we set up digital agency just about a year and a half ago. Japan has been lagging behind in digital transformation. So during the COVID-19, the government was to give out 100,000 yen benefit to every single citizen in Japan. But the government had no information whatsoever to do that. So we actually had to mail out application form to everyone, and everyone has to fill out the paper and mail it back. So it took many months. So we are now in charge of digital transformation of the Japanese government. When I was a foreign minister some years ago, when I had a bilateral ministerial meeting, I was the one who was asking, we are ready to support your economic development. If there's anything Japan can do, we'd be happy to do. But now as a digital minister, when I have bilateral ministerial meeting, well, they always ask me what they can do to help Japan move forward with digital technology. Why is this? Why is Japan so lagging behind in digital transformation? Well, I think Japan was really good with analog technology, and we made it very easy, simple convenient with analog technology, and people are happy with it. So we have not been investing in digital technology enough. Until 2 years ago, when you visited automobile registration office in Tokyo, you saw a very nice conveyor in the office, actually physically moving application papers to the next post. And they said, well, it's fast and it's quiet, it's good technology. Well, it might have been in 20th century, but now we are in the 21st century. I think we need to move on to digital. Well, some Japanese people feel when they hear digital transformation, it's more like a cold machine, unhumane. But what we are looking at is, well, warm society, human-centric warm society with digital technology. Japan is losing population every year. More than 500,000 people we are losing. So if we are trying to create a human-centric society, I think human beings need to concentrate what human beings need to do. And anything human beings don't have to do, I think we need to delegate that to AI or robot or computer. And that's our goal for digital transformation. Now we are trying to issue individual number card, or we call it My Number Card. It's a card with IC chip, and it is a sort of electronic certificate to identify you online. So with this ID card, we are trying to make all the government procedures possible with your smartphone. So hopefully 90% of government procedures can be done on your smartphone with ID card. Right now, more than 75% of the Japanese people now carry this IC card. So hopefully we can leapfrog with digital technology in the future. Well, on April 29th and April 30th in Gunma Prefecture, I'm hosting G7 Digital Ministers meeting. In this conference, we would like to operationalize DFFT, Data Free Flow with Trust, which former Prime Minister Abe proposed back in 2019 at Davos meeting. Well, right now, data is transferred across the border globally. Without data going across the border, there are going to be no economic growth. So this DFFT, Data Free Flow with Trust, is a big issue. And Japan would like to put this on the center of the G7 Digital Ministers meeting. So hopefully everyone can join this DFFT, and we can make things a lot more easier on data transfer. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and looking forward to seeing you in person in the next occasion. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. This was, very well done, setting the tone here. Adam Posen, talking about and reminding us really of the importance for us as leaders to start engendering change without there being a crisis. When there's a crisis, we can all react. But doing it without a crisis, being proactive, is definitely one of the great contributions that former Prime Minister Abe brought to the table. Cameron Carey, very, very important, the emphasis on trust and setting international standards. There's a lot that needs to be done, whether it is in AI, whether it is in digital currencies, whether it is in intellectual property protections, a lot of work that needs to be done. Minister Hayashi, my strongest takeaway was really resilience, that we are living in an age where people use brute force now to enact and impose their will, their dominance on other states. And obviously the Ukraine and Russia conflict being the most obvious one on that. What is the resilience that we as free societies can build up to withstand these brute force challenges that unfortunately have started to rise again? And then Digital Minister Kono, reminding us perhaps that this transition from analog to digital, that there is a fear that people are being left out, that it is a dehumanized world, a world where Robocop takes over, and that sparks a lot of discontent and uncertainty amongst the people, while exactly the opposite should be happening. It should build the room for greater enlightenment, for greater free time, for greater contemplation, and ultimately, hopefully, for greater happiness by utilizing technology in that way. So I think, we're off to a good start. Now we are going to enter the first panel discussion, and there's a lot of panelists there, but it's a fun theme. Now I'm going to impose, in addition to the yellow and red card, I'm going to impose a German rule. And the German rule is that if you speak for more than 3 minutes, you have to buy a bottle of sake to everybody in this forum. It's very, very important. But this is going to be a short sort of panel discussion. I think we've got about 20, 25 minutes, but the topic is really building Japan as a pillar of AI and digital economy alliance between Japan, the United States, India, and Europe. And I wanted to start out by actually sort of presenting something that you all intuitively know. The incredible speed with which we can reach now. It used to be communication from the few to the many, and now it is communication from the many to the many. And we don't quite know how to filter, how to control that. And the other thing is that technological advance, as I know this group has discussed before, spectacular. I mean, just think about it. Do you remember, Honda Sensei, for television, when television was invented, to reach 50 million users? Do you remember how long it took? It took 50 years. When the television was invented, to reach 50 million users in the world, took 50 years. Sorry, that was when the telephone was invented. It took 50 years. When the television was invented, it took 22 years to reach 50 million global users. The internet, 7 years to reach 50 million users. Facebook, 50 million users, took 3 years. And WeChat in China took 12 months. The latest big thing, ChatGPT, took actually 38 days to reach 50 million users. But the world record of something launched reaching 50 million users, the world record is your country, Japan. It is Pokemon. Pokemon, to reach 50 million users, took 19 days, twice as fast as ChatGPT, and way more fun as far as I'm concerned. But I just, it's obviously, a lot of changes that are going on. And I thought maybe Alex Pentland, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Alex, you are one of
my 2 minutes and 59 seconds.
Your 2 minutes, I will give you, because it's late in the evening for you, I will give you an additional 20 seconds.
Okay. So one of the themes here is trust. But when all the digital technology, the internet was invented, there was no secure identification. There was no legal enforcement. There was no technology for actually carrying out an assured, enforceable transaction. And that is the source of most of the sorts of things that people point at, is that the medium that we use for digital is inadequate. And so one of the most exciting things that's happening is that it's beginning to be reinvented. And there's a lot of course, craziness around it, blockchain, AI, but also distributed identities, smart contracts, auditing is the way you control AI. These things are coming together to make it a transaction media that's reliable and trustable, auditable, and enforceable. Now, there's a lot of international competition around this, and I would encourage Japan to think very carefully about this. For instance, we helped Switzerland put together a system like this called Swiss Trust Chain. Singapore's sovereign wealth fund has invested a huge amount of money to build and deploy a system like this with aid from JP Morgan. China, of course, is perhaps the most advanced at this and is now deploying their version of a transaction media, the sort of next generation of internet, to all of the Belt and Road. And as an advisor to the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund and also to Singapore, I can tell you that a lot of the small trade countries are extremely interested in moving to this new sort of platform to be able to counteract, for instance, the sorts of non-Western platforms, the Chinese in particular, that threaten to actually take over the administration of trade and of finance. And you may think this is all overblown, but SWIFT, who moves money around the world, they are planning that their systems will become tokenized. They'll become like these Web3 systems and will handle something like $27 trillion a year within a fairly short period of time. One of your major telephone companies is also planning to move to a Web3 system. This is happening around you, but most governments aren't really aware of it. And the idea that these new systems are going to be owned by people who may not share your values is, I think, something to contemplate on rather deeply and to act really quickly. So I will just stop there. And I don't know how many seconds I took, but I think I've made it.
And this focus on identity, I think is a very key one. Perhaps, from the Japan side, if I could maybe call on Hata Sensei to make a couple of comments, and also for you, since you're a wise man, I will give you another 30 seconds if you need to.
Thank you very much. Well, as you pointed out, everything is moving quickly, and one of the very important reasons why Japan was behind this innovation was that our labor practice. It's very hard to switch jobs, and also it's not easy to start new firms. He would not be able to return to the old big firm, and so we need to change the labor practice. And the obvious way to change it is to enact a law that to enact a law which basically stipulates that the dismissal is legal as long as it's based on the prior agreement between employer and employees. Now, this is an obvious solution, but of course, there will be a vehement opposition to this freedom contract concept, and so we have to make some sort of considerations in introducing such a law. The first thing is this. Basically, those people are afraid, who object to that, are afraid of the abuse of the power and the abuse of dismissal power. Now, in the United States, basically, freedom of contact is observed. But if a firm dismisses, there is a penalty in a sense. There are a couple of penalties, but one penalty is that the rate of uninsurance payment will be raised for the company with a higher record of dismissal. In Japan, that's not. And so the company can free ride on dismissal. And that should be changed first. And second, probably we should introduce a statutory, statutory sort of minimum level of severance payment. Of course, you know, in the ideal world of free contract, that should be voluntary, but probably minimum level should be set. That's second. And in the U.S., in many states, sort of such level is set. Although people can opt out from that if they choose to, but here probably at least for the first time being should be required. And the third, which is most important, even if we set such a statutory level, when a firm is near the bankruptcy, they will fail to pay such severance payment, and that's a time when they would like to dismiss the workers. So probably we should set up a publicly run statutory severance payment fund, very much like an insurance, unemployment insurance fund. And the premium, the companies should be required to pay in the premium, which again depends upon the dismissal record. So if we make those kind of constellations, then the freedom of contract may be at least improved compared to this kind of situation.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hata Sensei, for a wonderful reminder. And I mean, as you were very much involved, again, the late Prime Minister Abe, with Hataraki Kata Kaikaku, the change in just easier in Japanese. Hataraki Kata Kaikaku. The way of working, yes, the way of working. Trying to move in this direction. It was very interesting to me. I'm sometimes asked by global hedge fund and wealth fund managers, right? What's your 1 30-second chart that things are changing in Japan? And I use this chart of Datsukan, which, as you know, if you look at the elite bureaucrats in Japan, right, by the age of 30, what percentage quits their job? And it used to be a flat line at about 0.8, 0.9%. Nobody quit the top bureaucracy. But already 2 or 3 years before COVID, this line started to move up, and it's now slightly above 10%. So if the elite, the best and brightest in Japan, are now actually saying, hey, I'm going to take a chance. And it's quite interesting. I asked the gentleman at the Ministry of Finance, where do they go? Do they go to Mitsubishi Corporation? Do they go to JP Morgan? And he said, no, 70% or so go to startups. And if that really is happening, then this younger generation that is starting in Japan, does appear to be, more mobile, more risk-taking than perhaps some of the previous practices that we've had here in Japan. And as we all know, capital, you do not need a better chat GDP. That can help, but at the end of the day, it's going to be the human entrepreneurship, the human risk-taking, the human inspiration that is really going to build the next step of innovation. And that, I think, is very encouraging for Japan to actually take a lead there. And maybe the younger generation, is, on the right track here. Now, may I, if somebody wants to say something, please do feel free to raise your hand. If not, I'm going to continue to be Germanic and do oh, we've got a hand here in Japan. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Masazumi Wakatabe. I can actually, follow up the Jesper's comment. I think that's I'm going to talk this about in my presentation, but I don't think we shouldn't feel so pessimistic about Japan's future. That's point number one, because if you think about the younger generations, actually, if you think of talk to students, university students, starting from the sort of top tier universities, their first aspiration is to have their own startup firms, and then that they would like to be prepared for making their own startups, so that they go to consultancies or they go to the trading companies. So in that sense, change is already happening. I so concur with the Jesper fully. Actually, by the way, that I used to work for the BOJ. The same thing is happening to the US, the BOJ. So the elite bureaucrats and the sort of public officials are kind of, that's sensing the change, and they are trying to catch the sort of new dynamism. Now, I think the second, I think the point I would like to make is that on top of Hatta-san's point, which are quite variable, we have to be reminded of the sort of importance of investment, so that we should have the sort of actual money flowing into those R&D sectors and also AI industries. So in that sense, that macroeconomic conditions are quite important, and also that we do like, yeah, I'm okay. Just see me. Hi. Okay. So just to be seen. Okay. So in that sense, the macro conditions and also all sorts of corporate governance and the corporate structure should matter. Just one more thing, can I say? Okay. Adam gave us a very brief and excellent summaries of the achievements of Abenomics. But I'd like to amend just one point. He talked that the Abenomics was the example of achieving reform without crisis. But my sense is that there are two reservations we should make. One, I think that on reform side, Abenomics is still much unfinished business. I think that Hatta Sensei would testify to that. And secondly, that back in the year of the Democratic Party of Japan government, with the combination of the great East Japan earthquake, there was a sense of crisis actually. The deflation was bad, and the yen appreciated a lot. And there was a sense that Japan would no longer be a sort of viable or the sustainable country. So that's why, the Prime Minister Abe felt that kind of crisis sort of feeling. And so that's why he started Abenomics.
Wonderful. May I call on our friends in Boston, Professor Silbersteig? David? Tom Petterson. Okay, I apologize. Tom Petterson.
Oh, thank you. So I'd just like to make a note about incentives and getting the incentives aligned in the way that we would like to be aligned. I think when this group, we have aligned incentives in the sense that we understand the importance of good government, society. When we think about AI and and alliances. We think about the common good. But when you think about this area of AI, and my students are very interested in startups as well, I'm not sure how much they're thinking about the good of society than their own well-being in this particular context. And we worried about the digital divide. I think in many ways the AI divide is a bigger challenge because of what's needed in this area: big data, computing power, technical skill. Those are in short supply, and when they're successful, the incentives don't necessarily align with what we would like to happen. Transparency, interoperability, these are what we need. But if you have a successful firm, if you want to fend off the competition, those are the things you tend to contest. So I think we have to think hard about how we get the incentives aligned in a way that is going to result in the kind of outcomes that we're looking for.
Great. Thank you, Professor Patterson. Now I understand that Governor Dukakis has just arrived. Governor Dukakis, if I may call on you just for a couple of quick introductory remarks here. We've been talking about the role of Japan within the US, Japan, India, Europe alliance, innovation, and the advance of AI. But we'd love to hear your comments, Governor. Governor, I understand you're on mute.
How's that? Better?
Good.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, has some technical problems here, but it's not Tuan's fault. It's mine. Let me be brief but heartfelt. We lost a great man when we lost the Prime Minister at a time when we needed his leadership and the kind of leadership he brings and brought to international affairs so much. I'm very concerned about what's evolving. Another new Cold War, more of this kind of thing. Folks, we should be beyond that. We ought to be moving ahead together, resolving our differences, and making this a better place. And that's what he was all about. I didn't have a chance to spend a lot of time with him, but I had a sense that this was somebody who cared deeply about the future of humanity, who cared very deeply about the future of our international community, and was anxious to participate actively in a leadership role in that. And his death is such a sad and terrible thing at a time when we need people like him more than ever. Well, we have much to do, and I hope we can do it remembering him and the kind of leadership that he brought to international affairs. I hope we can calm down the kind of rivalries that are now beginning once again to affect the international community. We're better than that. We need the kind of leadership that he provided in such an impressive way until his tragic death. And I hope that we can keep his example in mind as we proceed now with new technology and new approaches, but with a sense of international cooperation that minimizes our differences, maximizes the agreements that we have, and makes this an international community that we can be proud of. And the Boston Global Forum, along with so many of you, will be doing everything we can to make that happen. So I have to cut out at this point, but I just want to say how proud I am to be here, how sad I am to have to remember his leadership now that it's gone, and the kind of approach that he brought to international affairs. And I hope his example will give us some real inspiration as we build a kind of international community that we and all of our peoples really want. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for some of our technical difficulties. But I look forward, and we look forward to working with you and to make this a better, a more peaceful, and a more compassionate international community. We need it, and I hope we can work together to provide it. Thanks so much, and thanks for letting me break in for a few minutes. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Governor Dukakis, a compassionate, and visionary, international leadership. Ambassador,
thank you very much. I'm so proud of myself because I've chosen the best model moderator for the first session. I put the standard very high, so it's not easy. But I have a question to you, Jasper. You said about this top elites of government or changing the position in few years' times and before the curve. It's a recent phenomenon, so there may not be real statistics. But two questions. One, is that only for the top elites who have credentials, him or herself, so that they can choose? If he or she is not from the big top companies or whatever, it's difficult. That's point one. Point two is after several years, are they satisfied about their choices? Thank you.
Not know yet, because this is really, a phenomenon that is, just starting. I sometimes liken it a little bit to some of the great Japanese sports stars, who okay, my voice. Okay, so no, I thought my voice was carrying enough, but not all the way to Boston and DC. No, Fujisaki said a very, very important point. The answer is there is no empirical data yet, because this is just 5-6 years starting, and we just don't know, where these people are. But I think it's a little bit. I liken it a little bit like the great Japanese baseball players. Who started to go to the United States, right? Sometime in the 1980s, right? The top ones. No, exactly, the top ones, but it has to start somewhere. And I think at the, the role of elites, the role of the best and brightest to set examples that inspire, right? The rest of the population. I think that is the absolute key there, right? Because I am going to be a little controversial. I say it's easy to become a salaryman, right? You just have to gaman suru. And there is a nice attribute to gaman suru because the Japanese are tough. They tough it out. And, as the Queen of England used to say, God bless her, keep calm and carry on, which is gaman suru, right? But this risk taking, this not being afraid of failure, this realizing that, yes, I join a new venture and this venture fails, but I will be fine. I will find a job. And this is where it is nice. And in my personal opinion, I actually think Japan is in a spectacular position because of the declining population. I know this is not popular to say, but, if you are a 23-year-old Japanese, and you've got a good education, you will get a job. There is no question that Mitsubishi Corporation will hire you, even if you fail a couple of times, just because there is so few people around it. So I think we all should aspire to be reborn as a 23-year-old Japanese. This first panel has come to a close. We're running, against time here. I just want to leave you with one final thought. Because we're talking about the challenges of new technologies, we're talking about the opportunities, but also some of the risks. And my former colleagues at Bank of America last week conducted a fairly big survey amongst their customers. And it was about, Chat GTP and AI. And the response was that slightly more than half of the people would prefer to be ruled by AI rather than current politicians. So, now maybe some of this is just a knee-jerk reaction, but I think, the state, as Governor Dukakis pointed out, the state of global leadership, the state of global, inspiration from the top, at this particular point in time leaves a lot to be desired. And I think that here, actually, Japan can play a great role because Japan is subtle in its leadership, but Japan is consistent. Japan is multilateral. Japan is open. Yes, Japan is focused on itself, of course it is, but particularly in the reference that was made to some of the smaller countries here in Asia Pacific. These countries like Singapore, like Malaysia, they do need to be open. By definition, they have no choice. And Japan recognizes, I think, that it also needs to be open. And as a result of that, it can actually take a wonderful, not a role of a mediator between the People's Republic of China and the United States, the two great empires, but really as an exemplary setter, right, of not necessarily having to pick sides, but being very clear in the ethics and the compassion of the leadership that you're trying to do. It is not make America great again. It is not make China great again. It is make Indo-Pacific great, not again, but great. Thank you very much. I think, do we have a little Q&A? Do we have a little break, or do we move right on?
We can invite more like James Ferreri or David Zimbabwe again. He can talk. Maybe also James.
Who would you like to invite?
I think we have in the list, we have a Professor David Zimbabwe and also have James Ferreri. David Zimbabwe. Yeah.
Yeah, so the program is a little bit.
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm so very sorry. So I'm honored to be part of this discussion. I am a doctor at Harvard Medical School at Mass General Brigham Hospital, and I'm a neurologist and psychiatrist and brain imaging scientist. And in 1993, I had a very, very memorable trip to Japan, to Sendai, where there was a conference on brain imaging. And I was so impressed with the Japanese science and medicine and collegiality. And to this day, that is a very, very special memory for me. We are in an era right now where there are tremendous advances in medical science and technology in Japan, in the United States, in many parts of the world. Big data and AI, machine learning, is allowing advances in healthcare and biotech. The ability to diagnose patients with all sorts of diseases with AI is growing by the week. The ability to subtype disease, to be able to say that a certain patient has this particular type of breast cancer because she has this particular type of gene problem or imaging finding or cellular or metabolomic finding is growing by the week. The ability to develop individual personalized medicine that is mechanism-based is growing by the week. And the ability to enhance digital therapeutics in a very individualized way, in real-time, real-world feedback is growing by the week. In my field, brain imaging, the ability to understand the brain circuits that are underlying human thought and emotion and behavior is something that is exploding and transforming. The ability to understand psychiatric disorders, not just neurologic disorders, as disorders of the brain is opening up new treatments and can really help so many people who are suffering. The brain-computer interface is increasing, although we have to be very careful with ethics. So all of these areas are burgeoning. And in the context of this conference, I just want to open a hand to say that we at Harvard and Harvard Medical School are extremely eager to collaborate and to do things together with Japan. Boston and Cambridge are hubs of biotech as well. And there's so much that can be done together in the context of the vision of this conference and Prime Minister Abe. And so I would be happy to follow up with anybody that wishes to talk more about medical and technology and educational exchanges.
I think particularly, we talked a little bit about trust earlier, and David's emphasis on ethics. I think, particularly, as technology advances, is something where a lot more focus, will need to be done, and it would be great, to see greater collaboration between Japan and the United States on this. I think. Do you want to call on somebody else? Yes, of course, please.
May I?
Just one second. We go. Hi, Hamada Sensei, どうぞ。
私ですか。Thank you very much. I happen to be working with a psychiatrist in the Harvard Business School, so at the medical school, and I was impressed by this coincidence because of my past experience of depression after I came to this country. But other main thing, I thank all of you in this circumstance of COVID. I am able to see Adam Posen, Hayashi Daijin, Wakatabe Sensei, Hatta Sensei, long-time friends. My main point is I was listening with tears the comment of Dr. Dukakas about Shinzo Abe. I was in a close cycle, so it's natural that I have many emotional, including many remembrance and so forth. But I am recently surprised by the lack of sympathy or understanding of what Shinzo Abe did for the Japanese economy and Japanese nation, particularly for younger and next generation. Many traditional newspapers sometimes tease Abe-san, it's Abenomics society, something filthy or so, but I don't know. They might not like his political ideology that he was reputed to be very conservative from other politicians. But what I saw in him is more liberal part of him. He recommended or corrected me that free market wage formation may be obstructive to the growth or development of a nation. And he actually created about 5 million new employees or $2 billion worth during his second term of prime ministership. And it's not minor magnitude, it's like 100 or 90 people of 90 stadiums, Yankee stadiums. The 5 million people is contained in that. But somehow Japanese journalism are putting label that he was a very conservative, reactionary person. And I think as many younger people who brought flowers to his funerals, that their benefit or the safety of their future, Mr. Abe really seriously thought about. And he has a glorious record as politicians, youngest prime minister, the longest prime minister, and so forth. But he was struggling with intense stomach trouble. And if I don't mention the tragic death of him, he worked hard, flew almost every other day to foreign countries. And because I feel very sad about the Japanese journalism who doesn't understand or respect. And I was so encouraged by Dr. Dukaka's right recognition of his great value in the history of Japan and the world. Thank you.
Hamada Sensei, thank you for these very personal and compassionate remarks. It's a wonderful reminder. I think we've got one more comment here in the room.
Sorry for my intervention, but actually my question relates to the initial statement made by Professor Pentland, if he still remains online. Because I believe he provides very important information, I think. And if I remember correctly, I raised some examples of advancement of technology over developing a platform transaction, I think. And he raised 3 states, Swiss and Singapore and China. I remember only these 3 are examples he raised. And I wondered why other larger states like United States or other European countries or even Japan has not done yet. That's a simple question to
Professor Pentland, are you still on?
I think he has left.
Oh, okay.
Me?
Summer. Yeah, if you like.
Summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Go ahead. Some minutes.
Okay.
2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This is a good time to talk, Juan, or shall I wait for later in the meeting?
No, go ahead. I will give you 3.5 minutes if you would like.
Keep me to it. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here in the company of all the great people. My background is in public health and health policy in the US. Japan, I want to speak to what I feel my bond with Japan is. In personal life, I grew up with deep appreciation for its beauty and culture. And in professional life, it was the Toyota production system that I learned about in one of my classes, how Japan used the 14 principles of quality management that W. Edwards Deming, MIT scientist, wrote about and consulted with Japan and Toyota to make excellent cars. And Toyota outsmarted everybody in the market, in the auto market. One thing I want to emphasize in the context of the work that we are doing is interdependence. I think Prime Minister Abe would agree with a couple of points I would like to make here. One is that we live in a highly interdependent world. We grew up, we evolved as an interdependent species, but today we live in a highly interdependent world. And so collaboration or competition, it's not a zero-sum game. Collaboration requires that like-minded collaborators come together with shared goals, aspirations, shared values, openness in communication. Transparency is important. Trust has been emphasized, couldn't do without it. And resilience, collaboration at the global scale, the scale at which we are talking about, Japan, US, EU, India, Australia, and other countries. It's a very complex process. And complexity is exacerbated, as we know, by grand challenges that we face in what we call a VUCA world. It's a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. That's the world we live in, and we have crises around us, global crisis, war and climate change and so on. And so for transformation in the new age of global enlightenment, and that the Boston Global Forum embraces, and in the context of AI, I would say that AI is ubiquitous. It's permeable, it's wicked smart. It respects no borders. And so we are the humans. We are the ones who created it. We can and should make it work for the common good. Standards, we need frameworks that are sensitive to context. Not every country may work with one framework. There may be some adjustments that may need to be made to adapt to the dynamic and potentially self-generative nature of AI, which we are beginning to realize and leverage intergenerational. And this is very important in the context of the conversation we are having about Japan. Leverage intergenerational human capital, bridging the accumulated wisdom of, I would not say the old, I would say of the not so young, who recognize the value of common good, and the bold aspiration, intrepid courage of the youth for building a compassionate, I wouldn't say a brave new world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really, this focus on the intergenerational transfer, I think is very, very relevant. As many of you know, Japan is pretty close now. Almost 1 in 4 people is over the age of 70, right? As we also know that. No, nothing is. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm all in favor. But clearly the intergenerational transfer of monies, the intergenerational transfer of jobs, the intergenerational transfer of power is very interesting. It's very interesting in that respect. By the way, the average age in Japan is now 50 years. In the United States, the average age is about 35 years. But the average age of an elected American senator or congressman is 64. So 35 to 64, versus in Japan, 50 years is the population. The average age of an elected politician is 56. It's actually the narrowest gap, right, in any of the advanced industrial economies. Now, we're going to have to move on a little bit. I want to thank everybody, for participating in this panel. We're going to fluidly move on. If I could ask on Honda-san to sort of give his thoughts and remarks. We all know Honda-san. He is Mr. Abenomics, one of the closest economics collaborators, with Prime Minister Abe. And if I could, put you on the spot, and you've got all the time you need.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jasper. It's a long time no see, but I'm very have fond memory to see you and discuss about the Abenomics. Not yet the Abenomics is stopped yet, but it's like a kind of long story. Let me start with my story about Abenomics to the year of 2000, when I arrived in New York as Deputy Consul General and the Financial Attaché there. From 1998, the Bank of Japan, the bank for short, had introduced zero interest rate policy to overcome deflation, from which we had suffered for 30 years. And the policy was supposed to maintain until the deflation terminated. But the bank, however, lifted zero interest rate policy too early in 2000 without getting out of deflation yet. I talked to a lot of economists in New York, including the Federal Bank of New York and Professor Adam Posen, our colleague here today. All of them, however, reacted in a cautious way by saying that the Japanese government and the Bank of Japan do not understand how much deflation would give serious impacts, negative impacts on the economy. Particularly, I have a clear memory that Professor Adam Posen told me that it might be too late for the Japanese economy fully to recover. Japan should have tackled much earlier, say immediately after we recognized that the economy had trapped in a vicious cycle of deflation when the bubble economy burst. I feel Mr. Adam Posen is a kind of parent of Abenomics because he kept giving me an incentive to move forward. I turned to Japan in 2003, but unfortunately, I have no opportunity to talk to Mr. Shinzo Abe about this issue. And then I was transferred to London. And as soon as I returned from London in 2011 to Japan, I started to talk to Mr. Abe, and I urged him to take drastic measures for the Japanese economy to emerge from deflation. Then I'm a bit surprised to find that Mr. Abe had been already fully aware of seriousness of deflation problems and necessity to take drastic measures to tackle. When I was in London, Mr. Abe started to discuss this matter with some economists and professors, like Mr. Watanabe, sitting like next to me, and Mr. Hatta. I suppose sitting in 2012, Mr. Abe was elected president of the LDP and later prime minister for the second time. I myself was assigned special advisor to the Abe cabinet for Abenomics together with Professor Koichi Hamada, our distinguished colleague here in the US. This is a short history about how Abenomics started. Abenomics consists of three components, so-called three arrows. Please look at the first page. Yes, the first page and second page at the same time. For first, a drastic measure, monetary easing policy with inflation target. That is the first arrow. Second, prompt or timely fiscal stimulus measures. And third, economic growth strategy leading to private investments. I understand that my job today would be to provide the basic and introductory story about Abenomics and when we should do to complete the mission of that. I expect Professor Wakatabe to focus on the macro aspect and Professor Hata to focus on the micro aspect and growth strategy. The Japanese economy had suffered deflation and following secular stagnation because the demand shortage, originally caused by the burst of the bubble economy in early 1990s. I believe that the structural problems such as decline in birth rate will not be a cause of deflation, despite the bank's excuse. The decline in the birth rate is a result of deflation. The expansion of demand through monetary and fiscal stimulation should be given first priority and provide a precondition for sustainable growth. The growth strategy through the regulatory reform and fiscal investment would work only after GDP gap narrows to some extent. Since it would take some time to reform the rule of the games, such as expansion of the floor rate ratio, the Japanese government has embarked on the National Strategic Special Zone for deregulation, led by Professor Hata as part of the growth strategy. So the time is short. I skipped in the about the contents of the Abenomics, but to be frank with you, Abenomics is on the halfway to the success. So we have to do a lot for the future. We need to continue to stimulate the macro economy, not only to invigorate consumption and investments, but also resolve the declining birth rates using YCC framework. YCC is a very technical word, so I think Professor Wakatabe will explain later, which Professor Wakatabe would explain later on. And the new governor, Dr. Kazuo Ueda, he had just started the new job at the Bank of Japan. Within his term of 5 years, I'm sure that time will come for the bank to embark on the exit policy when the economy gets stable, together with 2% price stability target and full employment. The society we look for is one in which efforts are rewarded. The efforts include the reskilling, new investments, and efficient business models, moving for better jobs, and so on, instead of just saving money or following old conventions. This is possible only where the economy keeps growing with mild inflation. Last not but least, I'm so worried to see more and more mass media and economists criticizing Abenomics after his passing away by saying that Abenomics had failed. No, it's not true. It is on the halfway to the success. The truth is that there are some high hurdles to be overcome, namely austere budget. But I'm confident that sometime in the future, near future, I hope, Abenomics would accomplish its mission. I have never such a prudent politician with spiritual inquiry as Mr. Shinzo Abe. I'm grateful for his courage and eagerness to make Japan great again, and I pray for his eternal peace and ease of mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honda Sensei, for these good remarks and good reminder. It is indeed, as a non-Japanese observer of the events, it is sometimes a little bit shocking how the Japanese don't like to celebrate success. It's almost like, I think the inventor of the light bulb, Thomas Edison, I think I said, I found 50,000 ways not to invent a light bulb, right? That you focus on that rather than, okay, something actually got done, a positive tone was set. If I may, ask, perhaps, in the international panel, if I could, is Sanjay Anadatam, is he online?
Yes.
Sanjay Anadatam.
Yeah.
Yes, Sanjay,
Yes.
if you could perhaps give us a couple of your thoughts and perhaps also give us a little bit of a perspective from India.
Yeah, thank you very much. And my last name has been spelled a little incorrectly. It's instead of the T, there needs to be an R. So
I am very sorry.
No, it's it's Anandaram. So I just wanted to correct that. So thank you very much indeed for giving me this opportunity, and it's a really great honor and privilege to be here to participate in the Shinzo Abe Initiative second conference to make the economy of Japan great in the age of enlightenment. I'm the ambassador at iSpirit, which is a not-for-profit technology think and do tank based in Bengaluru, India. So I will very quickly, in the amount of time that I have, I believe it's about 3 minutes, talk to you about how we in India see this changing geopolitics, the role of technology, AI and digital governance, especially in context of a partnership with Japan. Today, as we know that as geopolitics, technology, energy requirements reconfigure global supply chains, priorities, and partnerships, India and Japan can build upon and strengthen their ties through technology. Some key areas. It's not been discussed in this session, but it's worth noting that India is a leader in conceptualizing, designing, developing, and deploying digital public goods at continent scale and bewildering diversity, recognized by the UN, the World Bank, and now even an agenda item on the current G20. These cover health, education, credit, payments, drones, e-commerce, agriculture, and a host of other areas. They're critical for societal transformation of countries and to others around the world in a low-cost, high-volume, speedy, and consent-based manner. MOSIP, a world's largest digital public goods from India, is being deployed in Africa and Asia. And this is where Japan can play a role, as American, European, and Indian entities are already part of this entire initiative. PM Abe coined the phrase data-free flow with trust at the Osaka G20. Now, there is ample opportunity now for India and Japan to work together on building upon India's formulation of a techno-legal artifact that is not just focused on data privacy, but on also data empowerment and protection. So this will go a long way in ensuring that the data free flow with trust actually becomes a reality around the world and is not just restricted to data privacy and cross-border movements amongst a few select countries. So creation of new institutions, new standards, innovation in policy governance, and especially access to markets. There was a reference to the aging population in Japan and and the age in the US. India is the world's largest population of young people, average age of 29, and so therefore it offers enormous opportunities as well. Now, finally, coming to AI, the flavor of the season, while there's been a call by global leaders of AI to halt work till discussions are held on issues of concern, it's important to also note that AI is a force for good, a force multiplier for good, particularly in countries like India, in areas like healthcare and education, agriculture. And in these are the, and including languages, India has 22 official languages, and language translations using AI can be a very powerful tool for cooperation, collaboration, and sharing. And this is where Japan's expertise in AI and security, etc., coupled with India's own talents, can be a phenomenal opportunity to collaborate and work together. A 2020 report said that about 12% of all AI researchers worldwide are of Indian origin. And India is also one of the major hubs for startups and entrepreneurial activities. Again, there's enormous opportunity for working together in areas like 6G, decarbonization, security, quantum computing, and a whole host of other areas. And finally, I would like to end in the interest of time. The Japanese ikigai, ultimate purpose of our being in the age of global enlightenment with peace and humaneness, is tied into the realization of an ancient Indian model called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, namely the world is one family, that's engraved at the entrance to the Parliament of India. So once again, with my Shraddhanjali and homage and respects to the late PM Shinzo Abe, and profound thanks to all of you for inviting me here. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sanjay. May I call on Hata Sensei or Wakatabe Sensei? Do you want to make a couple of more remarks? Yep. Yep. Excellent. Fantastic. No. Good. Yep. 5 minutes.
Thank you. So could you put my slides on? Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. Once again, my name is Masazumi Wakatabe. I used to be a deputy governor of the Bank of Japan about 3 weeks ago. So that's the. So I don't have to remind you that my views do not reflect the views of the BOJ. So I don't have to do that. I'm just a private agent. So 5 minutes are too short to make a joke, but let me try. First, I would say, that's the. Could you turn to the second page? Thank you very much. Okay, too small to see. So first thing I would like to say is that Japan, despite some pessimism, I think Japan is still great. Yes, of course, we have shadows of long stagnation, lost decades. So the former Tokyo bureau chief of the BBC, I think the Wingfield, Hayes, yes, he wrote a very interesting column on the BBC website. And Japan was the future, but it's now struck in the past. But I think there are some sort of rebuttals to his views as well. Now, let me emphasize that the fruits of Prime Minister Abe's mission. His mission was to make Japan great again, precisely on that part, and make the Japanese confident again. And also, he has a very grand strategy. I think that above all, he's a macro guy. I think the macro politics and macroeconomics guy. So he has, conducted the kind of integrated or joint operations politics and economics, both domestic and international. So he, kept working in 4 dimensions, and FOIP and CPTPP and Quad. These are the results of his grand strategy. And Abenomics is, of course, a part and a very important part of his grand strategy. And under Abenomics, growth rate per working population. Remind you that Japan has a demographic problem, so that the aggregate number does not really tell the sort of the true nature of the Japanese economy. But growth rate per working population with employment rate improved, so that we have more employees, and also we have a higher sort of growth rate per person. And of course, the women and the elderly work more, and we are no longer in deflation. So, and also I may point out greatness there, like the younger people, as Jesper reminded me of us. Shohei Otani comes to my mind, and also Satoshi Fuji. Actually, this is really important, but they are the result of fierce competition in Japan. Okay, and also soft power of Japan is there. Anime, manga, katsu curry rice, and ramen. Okay, so they are also the result of fierce competition. Okay, there's no sort of a high sort of entry barrier to open a sort of ramen joint. Okay, so how about the demographics? I must tell you that the actually the next slide too slow, too fine to see, but I think that's that one. もっと大きくできるかですね。パワーポイントをね。そうそうそう。Better, better. Make a presentation greater again. So I think the if you compare the total fertility rate among East Asian countries, China is 1.2, Hong Kong area is 0.8, and China Macau is 0.8, Japan is 1.3, and South Korea 0.8, Taiwan 1.0. And I think Singapore is 1.1. So Japan is not that bad in terms of demographic transition. By the way, Japan has started this declining population for a long time ago. So that's we have a kind of accumulated effect of that declining population. But now, the East Asian countries are rapidly actually having less and less children. Now, I think the one before this slide shows the sort of the result of Abenomics. I will skip that. And so the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. Okay. So having said that, the Japan is still great. I think we should say that we can make Japan greater and more interesting. That is really very important part. By the way, I have been to the DC area for about 2 weeks and before this forum, and I was struck by the sort of the not taking an interest in sort of Japan, except YCC perhaps, So the investors are quite sort of keen on the Japan's next move in terms of monetary policy. But I think in general that Japan does not really generate a lot of interest. But that's too bad, I think. So we have to make Japan more interesting. So here I think the global enlightenment is the key, although I'm not really sure what it means. My understanding is the great openings. And the great openings happened throughout the Japanese history 3 times. David Weinstein of Columbia University emphasized that. Nara period, the Meiji period, and the post-World War II Showa period. And during those periods, we have opened up our country to sort of intellectually and on many fronts. We had a sort of a burst in creativity this period. So let me just give you the examples. Green tea. Now that's not original from Japan, you know. And katsukari rice, as I again mentioned, the pork cutlets, curry, and rice combination of these three factors, and the ramen, which does not originate in Japan. It comes from the China, one part of China, and we modified and we changed the something to the ramen. But I do think that we need the fourth grand openings. So that's what I would like to do, emphasize. And I do truly believe that we have a lot of room for catch up. So in that sense, the Abenomics is unfinished business. And after all, what Abenomics did was to make Japan great by sort of adopting policies which have been adopted for many other countries and have been quite successful for a long time. So what to do? Now, here's more interesting, but I have the next slide, please. Next one, please. Yes. Okay. I have just pointed out a basic principle. I think Japan should learn from the world. And what more can we do? First, we should take stocks. Okay. So, for example, fiscal policy, monetary policy, we should learn from the sort of the state of the art practice from the others. And also, one example I could mention is we can, to work on the closer fiscal monetary cooperation. I don't really. Oh, sorry, the one before. Sorry. Yes. Okay. And in that, so I'm not going to go to the detail of that. But for the growth policy, I think that Professor Hatta will talk more. This is a harder subject, but I think there is a lot of room for policy innovation for Japan. So we can learn a lot. For example, we have no spectrum auction in Japan, and we have no sort of Uber or Airbnb in Japan. Why is the question, you know? And the more competition policy and less industry policy is my slogan. In that sense, that I truly believe in the sort of the competition breeds excellence story. Now, the open versus closed regimes contrast. So the next slide is the one sorry, to the next slide, please. Yes, it's a kind of the broad sort of map for the Japan's sort of the grand economic strategy. But I must say that in light of the recent growing tensions in the world, we have to kind of take sort of strike a balance between openness and closeness. So the national security concerns should force Japan to be more sort of careful about to what extent and what we could be open to. So, but that's my talk. And the last one, please, last slide, please. More capitalism, please, is my slogan. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep, please. Just going to say, thank you for the excellent presentation. There is some Airbnb in Japan, and Uber is trying to be more active here as well.
Peter Landers from Wall Street Journal. I take your point that many my gaijin friends come to Japan and they are using with some difficulty using Airbnb, and they're trying to use Uber again with some difficulty, but certainly more room for growth in all kinds of businesses.
Well, thank you. I'd like to talk about the third arrow of the Abenomics. パワポのもう1ページを見せてください。もっと大きくしてください。Okay, thank you. I'd like to talk about the third arrow of Abenomics, which is growth strategies. 4ページお願いします。 Well, there are two sources of economic growth. One is, of course, innovation, and the second is structural reform, which means narrowing the productivity gaps among different sectors. If left to the competitive market, resources will flow in the direction of higher productivity, where the rewards are higher. Hence, the market allocates resources efficiently. However, this natural flow of resources often faces obstacles set up by incumbent firms to protect their vested interests. Structural reforms remove the obstacles that hamper the natural flow of resources. And it's not only those people who sort of block the move is not only the incumbent firms, but also the government ministries in charge of those firms. Next page, please. So naturally, structural reform meets political resistance. 次のページお願いします。その次ですね。Well, Mr. Abe were carried through the structural reform, but there are two important predecessors. One is Mr. Nakasone, and he focused on the privatization of public entities like Japan National Railroad and NTT. And his successor, sort of spiritual successor, Mr. Koizumi, also emphasized on privatizing Japan Postal Service. On the other hand, next page, please. Mr. Abe focused on his target was the entry barriers set up by various industries. So, for example, he completed the TPP agreement and the electricity liberalization against the intense objections by the farmers and also by the electric utilities. Now, the sort of as a third sort of tool, he used national strategic special zones to carry through the third arrow, as Mr. Wakataba said. Next page, please. Now, what's the sort of characteristic of that? Well, a new special zone law was enacted in 2013 and was revised every year. And this law exempts special zones from certain clauses of regulatory laws and stipulates new clauses applicable only in special zones. So that's the way things are carried out. Now, the next page, please. Well, until now, 128 reforms were made in those special zones. And as you can see, the Tokyo and Osaka and major sort of cities are included in it. And so in those cities, in those zones, new clauses of the laws apply. Now, next page, please. And how does it work? Well, as the chair of the Council of Special Zones, the Prime Minister himself makes decisions on each reform. Sometimes, after hearing the debates between the ministers of regulatory agencies and private sector member of the councils. So, whenever there is a disagreement between the ministries and the member of the private sector council members, then Prime Minister can make a decision. That's a sort of system. And of course, so the threat that we will bring it to the Council of Special Zones itself works very, very effectively and the sort of ministries often make reforms before we bring it up here. Now, next page, please. Next page, please. So examples of reforms enacted include this, and especially the second one, corporate ownership of farmland, was accomplished against very strong political objections. Next one, please. Now, as for drones and robotics, as you can see, these reforms took place. And for example, flying car so requires regulatory reforms, and that is right now taking place. Next page, please. And as for AIs, another reform allows the nurses to diagnose the patients supported by AI-supported equipment. And this is also done only in special zones. Now, the page 21, please. So to conclude my talk here, the real institution of special zones is a powerful political weapon to overcome the ministry first mindset through structural reforms. And I hope future prime ministers should make full use of this institution, and this will become a legacy of Mr. Abe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very lively discussion of the panel one. And now, to tell you the truth, we had 180 minutes, and panel one was to use 90 minutes, and panel two was to use 90 minutes. But we used 150 minutes in the panel one, so I'm relieved of my duty. But I think because panel two is also important, we would like to extend it to 12:30, and we have about 1 hour from now. So the way I'm going to organize this is that everyone would have say, and especially I would like to give preferences to those who have not spoken yet. And but 3 minutes rule should be adhered to. Not more than 3 minutes. I will come in and cut if you go more than 3 minutes. But now I think I would like to give first to a gentleman from Sydney who has been waiting. And Suzuki Sensei, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. Am I supposed to give a presentation?
Yes, you see, if possible, on China, I would like to pose 3 questions.
Mhm.
You can choose any one of them, or can speak 1 minute each to questions. 1, we are seeing confrontation between or competition between US and China. Some people think that it's going to continue up until Communist Party clashes. Some people think China is changing to charm offensive. So US-China relations may change. We cannot depend totally on US very strong posture. We have seen that with Nixon Kissinger. That's point 1. Point 2, Japanese companies are facing sort of being sandwiched between US and China. And some companies, very big companies, top companies are stop investing into China. But the middle ranks or cannot afford to do that. And they are afraid of China's punishment as well. So how is there going to be this fatigue of supply chain issues
Mhm.
and China, whatever. Third issue is global South.
Mhm.
US is saying, in short, are you with us or are you not with us?
Mhm.
If you are democracy, we will invite you. If not, we are not inviting you. Some people think that this is not a very wise option.
Mhm.
You are pushing the other side as sort of middle countries like Singapore or whoever into the other side, and also ganging up of those countries like
Mhm.
Saudi Arabia and uh, Iran and China is taking advantage of it. So there are three questions, and
Mhm.
I would like every one of you to think about it. And if you have any views, please do come in. Sorry for speaking more than 3 minutes, but this is. Thank you very much,
Right.
Suzuki-san, please.
Right. Thank you very much. So in 3 minutes, the first one is that I think yes, it is true that the United States, the position of the United States may fracture, and it is not the permanent setting. But at this moment, that the United States is getting very banged up with the Chinese approach, and the United States try to maintain its gap between the United States and China. So as long as the United States are able to continue maintaining the superiority against China, then this sort of a fiasco over the threat of China continues. So I don't think what Kissinger did was to balance the power between the United States and Soviet Union, and including China as the part of in this equation. But today, China is the forefront enemy, and I don't think it is not it doesn't have this Kissinger moment in this whole framework. So I think this continues in the foreseeable future. The second point, yes, it is true that it is very difficult for the small and medium-sized companies, and it is very daunting task for them to maintain this, to make a balance between their own interests and the economic security. However, the government will have a power to control over the export control, sanctions, and if the push comes to shove, the government will exercise such a state power to control over the export of certain items. And I think it is the government responsibility to limit the control over the items, so that the some of the small and medium-sized company will face the difficulties, but this is not going to be the full-scale decoupling. It is going to be a sort of a partial decoupling of the certain strategic items, and it's not going to be the T-shirt and the shoes and these kind of things will not be affected. So the small and medium-sized companies will continue to trade with China, and I think it is going to be um, some of the small and medium-sized company which deal with the strategic items such as silicon wafer or some of the material for the semiconductor. They will be infected, but that's sort of a limited effect. And those companies fortunately have a very high proportion of the global share, so that they would be able to find another customer. The third point, the global south. I think the bifurcation of the world is too simplistic, and I think the United States attempt of separating the world into two is not going to be successful. I think what's going to happen is that those global souths will be more independent, autonomous, and making their own decisions. They may they may collaborate with the United States for the security matters, but they may collaborate with China for the economic matters. So, they will be sort of an ambiguous position for in the majority of the global South. It will remain to be very ambiguous. So. I think it is much wiser for the United States not to push them out and try to separate the world into two. I think it is more important to allow their autonomous decisions and let them work with China, but controlling the certain strategic items. So I think what is important here is that there is a close interaction between economy and the strategy, but I think it has to be limited to the very security sensitive items. So I'll stop here.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Professor Suzuki. Thank you very much. And actually, U.S.-China trade is increasing as well, so we can't be really thinking that everything is sort of going to stop as well. And now I'd like to ask if there's anyone from U.S. side who'd like to speak, and then I'd like to give it to Watanabe-san. Is there anyone who could make points in 3 minutes? It could be 2 minutes as well, if you.
Also,
Hello.
James-san? Yes.
James Ferretti and Tom Keeler, very two guys ready to talk from.
Tuan-san is saying, who?
I think Tom Keeler and James Ferretti.
You're on, Tom.
Tom Keeler. Tom Keeler, you are here? I am
you.
here. Yeah, okay, please. Then James Ferretti, maybe, yes.
Well, I'm quite honored to be here and be part of this discussion. I think for the rest here, my lifelong interest has been in artificial intelligence, and in fact, some 40 years ago, I had the opportunity to come to Japan as part of the 5th generation celebration with Professor Ed Feigenbaum. So Japan has had a long interest in history in artificial intelligence, and I think that is, I think, an amazing part of seeing this current resurgence in interest. And I think the other thing, I just was recently back in November in Japan with another conference around the new digital economy, which looking at how decentralized governance and many things like that can have a stimulation in terms of both economic growth and a future for AI. I think there are a couple of technology issues that we need to address. One is the one of transparency. I think there's a significant concern about current AI as having issues with transparency and misinformation. And there are a number of individuals now who are working on a new generation of AI that will support more of a governance mechanism that is open and transparent so that we are not subject to that misinformation. But one of the things I think that is also coming up in this discussion is really about the importance of global cooperation and finding a common ground as to how we can solve impact problems. I'm actually at the moment in Boston as part with the MIT Media Lab, where there's been a number of discussions, for example, with the team from NATO around how we can use technology in moving us forward globally. While I'm not equipped to speak on some of the more global political issues, because that's not my area, one of the things I have been very focused on is, can we use technology to be an infrastructure for human-to-human communication, essentially a new kind of AI that's really focused on serving human needs and human good and human co-creation. So I'm very honored to be part of this discussion and have enjoyed hearing each person's point of view. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
Now I'd like to give it to Watanabe-san, please.
Jim Ferretti.
All right, thank you very much. I'm Nabe Watanabe, Sasaka Peace Foundation. Actually, I'm very impressed with the discussion already because, I'm a political scientist focusing on the national security issue. Don't have the opportunity to talk with such many prominent economists. So one thing, I don't have answer, but you may have answers. So one really important thing for the Abenomics and Abe's grand strategy. He made a lot of deregulation for the Japan's national security policy. As a result of this, Japan is doing a lot of things, a lot of homework, and require the big money. So current Prime Minister Kishida vowed to raising the defense budget, the 2% of GDP in 5 years. That's good. Still, it's not enough. Well, that's not enough. The how to compete with China, because we have the competition with somehow the national security competition, defense competition with China, but also competition with China for the economy and. But at the same time, the Professor Suzuki discussed, we cannot decouple Chinese economy completely. How we can do that? One thing, to be the competitive economy sector, probably Professor Hatta suggested several deregulation and smart and the smaller and efficient sector in Japan. In the medical area, probably the AI would help some remote diagnosis. This kind of things. Really, we need to do that. How to scale down the expensive medical expenditure in the Japanese government sector. That's really big task. That's cutting down, probably easier for us to increase our own defense budget too. So anyway, we don't have an answer, but I'm sure the many people here, the economists, have answer. So I'd like to hear any suggestion. And again, the competition with China is not the one-side military power balance things. No. We really need to have a sustainable economy in Japan, in the United States.
Thank you. I've been told that there's Professor Armstrong from Jakarta participating. Is Shiro Armstrong there, please?
While we are waiting for him, may I add something from the U.S. side on the?
Yes, please. Just keep it to 2 minutes, please. Yes.
Sure. So the sticking point, one of the sticking points between U.S. and China and this tussle about balance of power is because of lack of transparency and lack of trust. Lack of transparency, more so from China's side. And the second thing is the democratic values, human rights. It's a big issue. And I don't think any self-respecting democracy would put economic gain, short-term economic gain, over their fundamental values for its people. So I think those are the two main, very critical points that remain as the tenuous issues between U.S. and Japan. I'm sorry, so sorry, U.S. and China, and then China's own appetite for gaining more influence around the world. And I don't want to get into the details. It could be a long conversation, but this is something I want to put out in defense of US. US is not perfect, but I would say I was not born in US, but I would say that US is one of the greatest democracies in the world. One has to live it and know it.
Thank you very much. Very important comment. Now, is Professor Armstrong there? He's not there. Nakayama-san, would you like to say a word about you're expert on China defense and cyber as well? So,
but I like shark fins and the Chinese food either. So anyway, my name is Yasuhide Nakayama. I'm a former politician. I elected in 2003, and until the 2 years ago, I was in member as a member of the parliament. So there were numerous mentions of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe during the meeting today. As a politician, I belong to the Abe faction actually. And on the day that Prime Minister Abe was assassinated, I spent the night at the hospital in Nara, where he was rushed for medical care, along with his wife Akie and his younger brother-in-law Isao. I also saw of his body from the hospital when it was taken out for his funeral. Um, listening to a song by Vietnamese singer now, yes, singer now, I find my eyes welling up with tears. So thank you everyone on behalf of Abe faction members and arigato gozaimasu. So currently, Fumio Kishida, who served as a foreign minister under the Abe administration, is serving as Prime Minister of Japan. There are various evaluations of the policy continuity and change from the Abe administration to the Suga administration and the current Kishida administration. But I believe that the basic goals and directions that Japan should pursue for the future have not changed. I think one of the reasons for this is that geopolitical conditions play a very important role. Yesterday, Finland successfully joined NATO and bringing the numbers of member countries to 31. Europeans and we must protect European citizens who love freedom and democracy from traditional threats that have been around since the Soviet Union era and are still relevant in the current era of Russia. In Europe, multiple countries are standing up against the Russian threat. On the other hand, Japan must strengthen its defense against threats from Russia, North Korea, and China, just like Europe does, based on the foundation of the Japan-US alliance. In fact, Europe is one country against Russia. We, the Japan, one country in Japan various Russia, China, and North Korea. So we have a three front. Especially now, we have entered an era of unrestricted welfare, including space, cyberspace, and electromagnetic waves. With the emergence of the internet, there is virtually no boundary between civilian and military in the cyber field. The most important thing is digital transformation is successfully. However, perhaps because Japan is considered to be one of the safest country in the world, people's mindset has become that of peaceful neglect. I mean the peaceful dummy, and the investment in information and technology to prevent cyber attacks are still low, as Dr. Watanabe said, despite facing significant risks. The best example of this is the ongoing debate on active cyber defense in Japan. When the constitution was established in Japan, there was no internet. If tied down by the concept of defense only, even in the cyber field, defense itself will become impossible. In other words, there is a high possibility that the Japanese style, will not work in the world of active cyber defense. Therefore, What is needed is for the Japanese government to have a strong sense of crisis in the cyber field and make decision regarding the least maintained retaliatory capability for missile defense, as well as investing the cyber realm. I will provide clear and polite collaboration between Israel, a technology advanced country, and Japan is essential. Israel has technology from 0 to 1, while Japan has the ability from 2 to 100. It was asked make every effort to promote friendly relationship, exchanges, and collaborations with Israelis in aspects when I visited Israel with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2015. Japan has a self-sufficiency rate of only about 38% in terms of food and is a resource poor country. In a sense, human resources is only resource. Although Japan is facing on again and declining population, it is a processing and trading nation that can import deep tech and mass product. It's sophisticated technology. I believe Japan should make a made in Japan plan for the 21st century and contribute to the world. Another issue is that Japan's largest companies are slow to make decisions. It may take about 2 years from the start of conversation to a decision on investment. Startups are faster, of course, but there are advantages to large companies as well. Maybe same as country, China, Korea, etc. Japan needs speed. In the current situation, the cost of time for R&D and decision making is too high, and even if a technology is developed, it may be seen as inferior technology from the world's perspective. I am very worried about this. At the end of May, I will invite 200 founders of Israeli startup companies to visit Japan from Israel, and together with the Calcalist newspaper and the Chartered Group, we plan to hold 2 days event. In conclusion, the key point is self-defense reform by all means. Thank you very much. Arigato.
Very much, Nakayama Sensei. Is there anyone from Boston who would like to join us, please?
I think James Ferreri, he waited and James on.
Who?
Continue. James Ferreri. I don't know. He
Actually, James just left a few minutes.
James Ferrari?
Yeah.
Did you say?
Maybe, yeah. He left.
Yes.
He left.
No problem. So now I think
Tom has a comment in the notes section, and it's very valuable.
exciting.
Who did you say?
Tom Kelly.
Tom Keller, he put a note in the chat box, and I think that it's a very important point.
Yeah, well, because I didn't answer the question, Director, on China policy, because I am not, my role as a technologist, but one of the things that myself and the group are dedicated to is creating a new generation of AI technology that gives voice to every individual. And I believe this is our strength, because all of us who really believe in representative governance, that it is understanding the intention and will of the people that will create at the greatest level of political stability and security. This is not something that is desired in some countries, is that every voice is heard and you have a true sense of representative governance. And so that is really where I made my comment as more of a technology comment, but I believe that stability comes through listening to the voice of everyone everyone gets to participate in the governance. And I know there are initiatives like that going on right now within Japanese communities, looking at these new technologies around Web3 and DAOs, decentralized governance. And I do believe that the work that is going on in Japan even now is leading the world in thinking through some of these new technologies that are on the horizon. So I think that's one of our big answers for going forward, is to leap ahead of the current technologies, which are black box, which can lead to misinformation, and to create technologies that support representative governance. So that's just my thought on that. So.
And who used
And I don't.
we know as a top journalist, but now changed to technology, AI side, and I'd like him to have a few words.
Hello, everyone. This is Waichi Sekiguchi, president of Research Institute, a Japanese Tokyo-based IT research and consulting firm, and former editorial writer for Nikkei newspaper. And I have been covering IT sector for a long time, over 30 years. And then I'm really concerned about the technological development in Japan recently. So in relation to the US-China relationship, there's a big issue, which is the Huawei issue. So Huawei is banned from the US market for creating a advanced network. And then US is also requiring us to not use Huawei's technology. So that's free for US to do so, but I'm really concerned about that, because there are three major vendors in this technology, particularly 5G area, Nokia, Ericsson, and Huawei. But from my perspective, Huawei is much far ahead, because Nokia, Ericsson, they only make networks, but Huawei makes both hand device and networks. So it's much easier for other nations to adapt to Huawei technology as a package that's much, cost less, and also much faster to install. So if you look at the nations in the Middle East or Latin America or Middle East, Far East Asia, there are many nations which are more advanced in installing a 5G network rather than Japan. So what I'm saying is how we can create good relationship with China in the area of technology. So politically, it might be a little difficult, but we need to divide from technology from the political thing. It's difficult, but as Mr. What Emerson said, I think we have to think about the economic aspect and not only a political aspect. Also, in terms of the IT infrastructure in Japan, we are so independent on US infrastructure now. So until Eastern Tokyo, Eastern Japan earthquake, we didn't use cloud computing in this country. Everyone thought that having all the data within their boundaries safer, but that's not true. So because the earthquake, they had to lose their database or computers from hospitals or schools, and then they cannot do anything after the earthquake without data. So then Japanese companies, the governments started using cloud computing, but the Japanese companies didn't make good cloud computing platform, including NTT or NEC or Fujitsu. So we are now using American platforms such as Google, Amazon, or Microsoft. So we have to pay 1.7 trillion yen every year to use American platform in Japan. And this amount is now increasing. So what we need to do is we have to make our own platform with American companies and also with Chinese companies. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Peter-san, do you have any comment to make?
It's interesting to hear so many diverse comments today, and I would I spoke with Honda-san recently about Abenomics, but I wonder if you could elaborate on both you and Wakatabe Sensei could elaborate on sort of next steps. I think you said that his vision is halfway, halfway completed. But what is the next half?
Thank you. Thank you for a good question. I said the Abenomics is on the halfway to the success. I'm sorry to say that the Abenomics has been completely accomplished its mission yet. The reason why I said that was not is that the price stability target of 2% has not been reached yet. The current inflation rate around 4% is based on the cost push inflation because of the coronavirus subdued and the geopolitical aspect situation between Ukraine and Russia and other energy prices are going up. So those kind of issues made Japanese inflation rate up to beyond 4%. But basically, consumers' propensity or consumers' eagerness to spend more is not sufficient enough to maintain that the price target of 2% be maintained. So first of all, we expect the company managers to raise their salaries, incomes significantly. But in order to do that, as a government role, we maintain the active budget fiscal spending and the monetary easing, substantial easing on the Bank of Japan side. So now we have a new governor of Bank of Japan, Mr. Ueda, and he is very much committed to maintain the monetary easing policy. And he he said that he is going to maintain the current framework to lower the interest rate of what we call YCC yield curve control. So if we continue to do both the monetary easing and active fiscal spending, I think sometime in the future, within the term of Mr. Ueda's assignment of 5 years, I think we will see a time will come for the Bank of Japan or the government to take an exit policy. So it takes still some time, but someday, within 3-4 years, the time will come. And the Japanese real economy, the vigorous Japanese economy will start. After that, we have a sufficient demand, a little bit so pessimistic, but we are now approaching on the price stability target, and then we will see. The government and the Bank of Japan should continue to support the budget spending and monetary easing policy.
I actually I don't have really much to add to the Professor Honda's comments, but let me just say two things. I think one is that the sort of pursuit of vigorous macroeconomic policy is in itself necessary still, so that the BOJ is still engaging in monetary easing, precisely because we haven't yet reached the 2% inflation target in a sustainable and stable manner. So at this moment, I think that we have several positive developments. For example, the nominal wage growth has been sort of picking up according to the Shinzo results, but we cannot really be sure because first of all, is it to be sustainable? I mean, does it happen next year? And secondly, I think that will that happen to the smaller and the medium-sized economies, enterprises as well? So in that sense, we haven't yet reached the point, but I think that we have some promising signs. So we should keep going on that front. Another part that I haven't yet elaborated is that we need more sort of closer fiscal policy, monetary policy coordination, in the sense that fiscal policy should be sort of more thoughtful, more responsible, in the sense that we do not, the government should not abandon sort of the long-term goal of the fiscal consolidation. But given that objective, what is the best way to make a fiscal consolidation is the key issue. So without a robust macroeconomic growth, the government will never be able to achieve the fiscal consolidation at all. So that in that sense, there is sort of the virtuous cycle between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy, and we should work on that. Another point, actually, the last point, I said two, but three. The third point is that the vigorous macroeconomic environment must be conducive to sort of growth strategy itself. So I have just a chat with the Professor Hatt, but I think if you don't have a sort of a good macroeconomic conditions, those who are suffering from the sort of fallout from the bankruptcies or the changing and switching jobs and in the declining industries, they see no other places to go. So that's in that sense, we need to sort of provide with them sort of another options to work more productively. Thank you.
May I talk?
I'm sorry, who?
Hamada です。I'm Hamada.
どうぞお願いします。
What Professor Watanabe said as the last sentence, I agree, but I have two different ideas. If you look at the history of high growth Japan, 1974, after the oil crisis, Japan had 26 or 20 some high inflation rate. And if you look at various macro indicators, the present indicators are similar to 24. No, 2 years before the oil crisis, where all Prime Minister Kuda said crazy Kyoran no jidai. So I have to watch. Probably Professor Watanabe is right in that Japanese agents, both consumers and also particularly businesses, are so pessimistic after 20 years or after 1990. BOJ, Bank of Japan, kept contractionary policy until the beginning of Abenomics and Mr. Kuroda's start. So Japanese business put deflationary inflation in their mind for about 20 years and so forth. So it's not other price structures we see shows some inflationary dangers. So I think we have to be careful in both rounds. The reason that, of course, I agree with Professor Wakatabe that Mr. Kishida chose Ueda as the BOJ chief was a great choice, and he will continue. He will not stop the spirit of Abenomics, but there is some slight difference. And the second, more importantly, in the long run, government doesn't keep government balance. That is the truth. Abalana already 1930s showed when Keynes started his one. For the future generations, government balance or imbalance is a matter of income distribution between government and future generation. If we don't forget investing in human capital and keep them digital science and equipped generation and so forth, would be more harm than the keeping the budget balance. And I think that this what lacked in the discussion of technology is the role of human capital. Japanese education emphasized learning, not thinking. They try to import Chinese or world wisdom, but they don't encourage problem solving as the US pragmatism and so forth. So in addition to make every people internet compatible, I think more emphasis is given to give more emphasis, more incentives for super students, superb students. The Japanese society is already said, gaman, be patient. But we have somebody already said, American society, everybody had some kind of ikigai. They want to develop themselves to their capacities. And the Japanese education seems to be lacking these days.
Thank you very much, Professor Hamada. So that's why now you are in Yale University, not in Tokyo University. I like before I give to Jasper, Wakatama-san, do you have anything to say? Add to what, or if not, I'd like to give it to Jasper. Okay.
I think Watanabe-san asked the very interesting and great question as to the social security costs, and it's the matter of great concern. I think the Professor Hatta has other things to say, but there are several proposals to sort of restrain or control the social security costs. My sense is that it's quite difficult without any sort of without institutional reforms, so to speak. So in that sense, that we can think of several sort of reform plans, but they are really sort of difficult to implement, to say the least. But then again, that's that we can learn from other countries on that respect, and that's perhaps we need more competition in the industry itself, but that may not result in the sort of the result we want to have, in the sense that maybe the U.S. system incurs a lot of more sort of social security costs in terms of medical costs. Actually, the Japanese are good at maintaining the medical costs at lower level, so that that's the here. I think that we should be careful about thinking the ways to control this.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to pass to Jasper.
Thank you very much. Just this one aspect that is often forgotten about Abenomics and the legacy that actually Prime Minister Abe, was the only G7 leader who actually increased the top income tax rate. Remember, in 2014, top rate went from all in, local and national, 45 to 55%. And he was very proud and very aware that, yes, the gap between the rich and the poor is an externality, is an unwelcome element of capitalism. And he was very aware, of Margaret Thatcher, who had, I think, one of the great pronouncements, making the rich poor does not make the poor rich. And so the deregulation, the special economic initiatives to encourage entrepreneurship, all work very, very well. But it's exactly that leadership of striking the balance, right, of noblesse oblige, right, of enforcing common social capital, as well as empowering individual initiative and risk-taking. That's, I think, where we can all learn a lot from the political capital that was actually invested by action, not by discussion. One final point, looking forward, and this is very Japan specific, and I think that we live in a reality where the single largest increase in the fiscal commitment is on defense. And this is for a whole bunch of reasons, which is perfectly fine. So Japan will go from 1% of GDP to 2% of GDP. This is the single biggest honeypot that is being opened up here, the single biggest structural fiscal commitment that Japan is making. And the challenge going forward, in my personal opinion, is the question of, will this money just be consumed? Or will it actually be invested? What Japan, in my personal opinion, and as many of you know, I'm involved with OIST, the Okinawa Institute for Science and Technology, which just won a Nobel Prize for Japan. But this question of dual use and the governance around dual use and the resistance, and maybe partially the right resistance that the Japanese Gakkai, has towards, defense technologies. But clearly, it was talked about cybersecurity, for example. I mean, cybersecurity is, it's dual use almost by definition, right? So to separate this out becomes very different. But I think that the Kadai, the real challenge for Japan, and I think where Japan can actually learn from the United States, from Israel, from Germany, is how to manage, dual use, university level research, that does bring benefits for commercial enterprises, for society, beyond just, building up the defense capability. That, I think, is a new legacy challenge, right? That I'm sure Prime Minister Abe would have tackled in a very open and constructive way, but it is a challenge that needs to be implemented, in my personal opinion, with actually quite a sense of urgency, because the money is starting to flow as of this month. Thank you.
Now, one 30-second comment.
If there's no burning sort of desire on the part of participants to make comments.
Yes, I have to.
Oh, Hamada Sensei?
Professor Patterson, if I like. I think you raised very important questions. If I being liberal when Mr. Kishi, Abe-san's grandfather, was in control, I was liberal, but now I completely understand Japan should defend right now. So increasing defense spending is important, but whether since it is a new spending, you should finance by tax or by leaving it as it is. Depends on the situation. If the economy is like in Japan, now still more or less demand deficient, then again, Abalana would say, you may use for defense spending and increase income of people and forget about the balance of budget. However, it is more likely the defense is not ending 1 year or two like earthquake. So certainly this situation indicates that sometimes Japanese citizens should bear and feel the cost of defense spending themselves in order to defend Japan. But the present journalistic tendencies, since defense is more important, we should increase the income tax or consumption tax. That is short-circuited until the economy reaches the full employment line that Mr. Honda showed in the diagram. We can wait to increase various tax rates that has more, sometimes other side effects. Thank you for letting me in.
Thank you very much, Professor Hamada. One thing I'd like to add is that if we discuss defense spending, the last word of President Eisenhower was that American people should be aware of military industrial complex. That was in January 1960, 63 years ago. And many people think that that's nothing to do with Japan because it's so small, nano-sized. But that could lead on to whatever, a bigger size. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Is there anyone who would like to, yes, Nakayama-san, please.
So I think about regarding the defense spending, as Jesper-san said, Japan is going forward regarding the GDP, 1% to 2%. But for example, how about Israel? Israel is defense spending 4% compared to the GDP. But how is the education investment for the kids? It's 7%. It's more than the warfare or investment spending for the defense. So defense and also education is 11% Thai GDP. And when the Yom Kippur War started, Israel government spending 25% out of the GDP. So this is an example what the war and the defense spending is. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. I'd like to add the budget increase for defense. Mr. Shinzo Abe is a long friend, longer than 40 years. And he has been very curious about not only for economic policy, but also, of course, defense policy, the social security and national security. But before he was assassinated, he kept asking me that Japan need to double our defense budget to 2% of the GDP. And he asked me how to finance that. And he confirmed that we don't have to increase the tax at all. So he tried to confirm with me that no, we don't have to increase the tax. The national bond for construction based on the budget law of Article 4, not deficit financing bond. We can issue the construction bond to finance the budget increase for defense. But he died in that way, and sadly, and Prime Minister Kishida never talked about the bond issue. At the very beginning, from the very beginning, he decided that we should finance almost 3 trillion yen for national defense budget, and in 5 years, in Reiwa, ninth years of Reiwa, we need the trillion yen tax increase for the budget finance. So that is completely different from what Mr. Abe was concerned. So from a theoretical point of view, I think Mr. Okatabe and Mr. Hata and Mr. Hamada will agree with me that we don't have to hike the consumption tax or income tax. All that we have to do is to grow the economic size. GDP growth rate should be maximized. So when that happens, the tax increase will grow naturally. The tax elasticity at this moment is very high. If 1% GDP increase 1%, the tax revenue will increase by 2.7%. Its tax elasticity is very high. We should take advantage of the high tax elasticity more. So I'm cautious about the discussions, and luckily next year we will skip the tax increase, but the year after the next we have to concentrate. We have to intensive tax discussions on budget spending, particularly how to finance the defense budget. Thank you.
The difference between Abe-san's thinking and Kishida-san's thinking, and so I'd like to thank you for that. Now, if there's no one who have a burning desire to express his or her view now, it's an intimidating comment, I'm sorry. But I would now like to pass on to Tuan-san and Mita-san for concluding remarks. I think in the second session, we also had a very lively discussion, and like to thank you for the participants. Tuan-san, can I pass on to you, please?
Thank you so much. And I think this is a history. So, you hear? Okay. Yes, we continue make his achievement and legacy alive and contribute more. And as we discussed today, we have a special report, and we will make Japan's prominent in the new age of global enlightenment. And we will action as we are discussed, and now is the time for action, and action faster in the age of AI and age of global enlightenment, and smarter, more helpful, and more productive, and connect with our alliance. Yeah, very important for the world this high. We know about dangerous, about threat from authoritarian government and countries. And now, yes, I think the future, as Governor Michael Dukakis talk, Shinzo Abe leadership and concept, very important for global leaders. And we follow and make that happen again by action with a special report today. And also from the second panel, very important, we we'll make also another report to contribute to government and for I think maybe proposal to G7 summit also as we proposal in BGF G7 summit 2016 at Prime Minister Abe host and we contribute and as Ambassador Fujisaki contribute ideas we are highly respect and we can do from next year that is the create and found Shinzo Abe award for young leaders. And we will do every cherry blossom in Tokyo, in this high Shinzo Abe conference and present Shinzo Abe award from next year. And I hope I will continue every year come to Tokyo is it high. And from our heart that we thank very much for your great contribution, great fans, great contributors for Boston Global Forum. And Boston Global Forum, we are very honored and very proud of our thinkers, our people. You are very important with the Boston Global Forum and for long time now this year 11 years and we start here with conference first conference 2014. Yes, now I think it's an amazing achievement and Japan, the US, I hope in the future in the next this century it make more close, more helpful, more I think smarter and faster. I hope and I believe Japan will faster. Yes, more faster. Yeah, and so no one know what to say. Our grateful for your contribution and see you next conference in April 26 at Harvard Faculty Club, and we will honor one leader of Japan as a world leader in AIWS in this year. Also, we have Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is world leader for peace and security, and we have another award every year that is the world leader in AIWS, and this year we will honor a leader of Japan. And thank you so much, and I love, with my personal, I love Japan very much, and we have some books that is a gift for the people here. Our attendees can take the book from Vietnam, but two language, Vietnamese and English, about AIWS also. We introduce AIWS on that book. Thank you very much. Thank you. Nobimita. Yeah, we are highly appreciate Nobimita. She is great contribution.
Conference with very, very distinguished intellectuals of Japan and from all over the world. We would be happy if we could contribute to Japan through this Abe initiative. And we would like to develop this Abe initiative from now on. I'm burning woman, as Ambassador Fujisaki said before, burning, fire woman, fire spirit. You said. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. And please approach moderator Fujisaki and Esper. Thank you. And Mr. Tuan, welcome to Japan again. And this is for you from us. And please shoot photo after that. Together. Okay. じゃあこれ ちょっと待って、これが映らない。桜、桜。Cherry blossom. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, my dear friend from Boston, from another side.
Thank you. Koichi Hamada, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Suzuki, Professor Suzuki from Sydney, thank you. And other people, thank you.
副領、